So continuing on with the Julia table, we've got one piece cut for the one of our front doors cut, and we have the second door kind of currently in the arc router cutting sled, the arcs. Thanks to Simply Fin, or the Simple Fin rather, for suggesting that name, the arc, standing for arc router cutting sled. It's just easier to say arcs. So here we are in the arcs. Thanks again to the Simple Fin for creating this. We're making the beads on the other door for the router for the Julia table. Sorry, the router sled on my mind. So I'll set you up here just to kind of couple sample cuts of this bead, and then we'll get on to further details of the table. So that's kind of the rough look that we're going for the Julia table. Kind of pleased with that. Of course, this section here is going to be cut out for the leg. Yeah, and it's going to be a little bit narrower. This is probably about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch too tall. So that's going to be cut down as well. But overall, pleased with that progress. That's going to look good. Now I'm going to figure out getting the legs, a little bit more attention to the legs and how these doors are going to fasten, and I need to put the back on the assembly. So those are bits to work out now. Alrighty, I've just gone over the top and bottom of our table, not to get rid of any blemishes in the wood, but more to get rid of blemishes in my joinery and rough saw marks and so on. So I'm just going to blow this piece off, but I'm going to call it there's just some lovely nastiness down here, the beetle marks. So we're trying to preserve that in this piece. I'm just going to blow this off. So having blown that piece off, if I bring it in closely, you can see just some lovely little beetle marks and stuff, and slug marks. So that's all going to be a nice character that we want in that piece. So again, that was just sanding, doing a rough sand with some 80 grit. I'm going to now move on to assembly. And then once it's assembled, we'll start working with the fine grit. I need to do the initial assembly, and then I can cut the doors exactly to size and make them fit. So the table will be assembled first. All right, we're ready to glue the back of the table to the top of the table. So we'll put some glue on here, put a couple clamps on, then use my little nail gun and tack the two pieces together, and then put on a couple more clamps just to let that set up. going to use some sawdust to pick up all of the excess glue. All right, top and back are glued together. Then we'll give it a chance for that to set. And then we'll put some legs in and get the bottom piece put together. That'll all have the legs, and the bottom will probably have to go in tandem because the notches that we cut out in the bottom piece for the legs. Okay, I'm getting ready to do the assembly of the legs and bottom, and discovered a little inconsistency that will need to be addressed, and that is that the legs at the bottom, the back legs, are farther apart, so this leg and this leg are farther apart at the bottom than they are at the top. However, really the critical measurement that I need to be careful of is the top leg. So the top leg is going to fit into that slot, and I want to make sure, absolute sure, that it is two things. One, the same distance off the floor at the top of the leg and at the bottom of the leg, so that it's not sloping out to trip somebody. And secondly, that it is not askew. It's not pointing that way, it's not pointing that way. I want to be exactly right. So that means that there's going to be I may need to do a little bit of adjustment on this slot here. I measured it all carefully. It should, theoretically it's perfect, right? But practice, it may be out a little bit. So I'm going to do some careful measurement to make sure that I get this, I'll get the top leg mounted first. And then I can be sure that it's all entirely square where it needs to be. And then I can worry about the fine tuning of the bottom leg, of the back legs. So that's the little conundrum I'm fiddling with at the moment. So I found that the top leg here was about 1/8 of an inch high at this bottom end. So I took off just, probably a 32nd, if that, just with some sandpaper on this bottom edge here, and that brought it down. So the height now of this leg is exactly where I want it to be. Now I just need to measure the center to center. I want to make sure that I get that right. That's a little bit trickier, but what I'll be doing is using the table saw slot for the guide. I'll be using that as my straight edge, and then I can measure using the square, set the square up, and go from the front of the table to the edge of the leg. So I can measure from the front of the table to the back of the square. That tells me where that is here. And then I can go from the bottom of the leg, at the bottom of the leg, make the same measurement. And I should know if I'm accurate. Okay, so again, just making sure that I'm flush here. And this will be square. So that is 12 3/4 inches exactly. And that's 13 inches. So I'm out by 1/4 of an inch down here. So this leg is actually leaning that way 1/4 of an inch, which means I will need to pull this in a little bit, or probably pull the leg over a bit. Let's just try that. There's a little bit of play in there already. Just going to use this clamp to ensure that this stays over. Do another measurement just to be sure. So I'm at 13 1/16 there. Yeah, out by 3/16 of an inch. Okay, so 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to use a little bit of math here, figure out the ratio between that 3/16 of an inch over 29 inches, what is the difference here over 5 inches? Sorry for that interruption. So what I need to do is widen this slot. In fact, just open it up here 1/32 of an inch. That's all. So I'm just going to use some sandpaper, widen that out a little bit, and put the leg back in. You know, 3/16 of an inch doesn't seem like much, but it's one of those things where it's probably just enough that somebody looking at it, somebody that's critical about it like me, is going to look at it and think, that looks weird. So just going to take care of the problem now and be done with it. Having said that, since I do have to make an adjustment on the bottom, I better make sure that I have the top and bottom aligned first before I do any cutting. Let's double check that. Because it looks like that bottom piece can come out 1/32 of an inch. No cutting required. Just let me double check on this side. Having done that little bit of jiggling, let's see what we get now. I have a feeling that this might be right smack in the right spot, providing we get this piece in the right spot. I'm going to call it good. And the reason I'm going to call it good is because I have that 1/32 of an inch wiggle room here, and that's going to give me the distance that I need down here. As long as I keep this edge of the leg tight against this slot, I'm going to be okay. So I'm going to call it good. That being said, now I want to glue this leg onto the top of the table. Okay, here we go. Should have thought of that. That way. The reason I'm spinning this is around, I want to make sure I have the best surface here and the best presentation down here. So that's what's going to give, that'll give it to me. Let's put it in there. Let's crank it in. Okay, have an appropriate glue squeeze out coming, that's good. And we'll just slip this back in, make sure that the leg keeps its orientation, doesn't twist or anything. Which I can see it has wanted to do. I need to make sure that this is exactly square and vertical here so that I can get that 1/32 of an inch that I'm looking for. So I have it. We're all good. Okay, I'm going to leave that to be for today. Mission accomplished. So just a little short video today on progress on the Julia table. Thanks for watching. I'll post another update tomorrow.